Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and I figured I'd learn a new language today, and I figure you guys can watch me do it, so that way you guys can kind of see the process that I go through when I learn a new language, like how I think about it. And let's see here. Let's take a look. Let's create a new REPL. Let's take a look. See here. See, I'll find a language that I haven't really done anything well. We'll keep Scheme in mind. Let's just see what else we got here. Maybe not Haskell. Anything else interesting? Lua, we'll keep that one in mind. Quill, Crystal, Julia, Nim, Reason, Erlang, and Scala. Yeah, let's do Scala. Let's do that. Okay, create REPL. Okay, we'll just call this Scala practice. Okay. So again, this is REPL.it. It's a great place to just kind of practice. Okay. And I see we already have our hello world. Okay. So basically, right off the bat, I can notice a few things. Just because I've done so many other languages before. And if I remember correctly, Scala exists in the Java virtual machine. So, and actually Scala, if I remember, no, Scheme was part inspiration of JavaScript. It was like Scheme and Java, but Scala is a popular Java virtual machine language, which I haven't used before. But a couple things I can pick up right off the bat. Just like many compiled languages, it has a main function. So you define, but in this case, what they're doing is like it's Java virtual machine, so everything has to start off with a class. Except here, instead of the word keyword class, they're using the keyword object. So I can already see that you define classes use the keyword object. Here we're defining a main function, so I can already see the syntax for defining a function is just the def keyword. And then you can type. There's typing. So here we're typing this args argument, which is just basically the args you pass in when you call in the command line. And then here you're typing the return value. So this is a typed language. And then here I see our print line is just print line. That's nice. Okay, nothing too long. Okay, cool. So let's just run that. And it's going to run. Try us. This particular REPL is in beta, so it's taking a sec. Let's refresh. Okie dokie. Let's try running that again. Interesting that it's taking so long. I guess it is kind of, again, in beta, so to be expected. So let me do this. Well, that does that. Let's take a look up Scala Syntax. Okay. So always one of the first things I want to learn is just sort of how to basically declare variables and such. So let's look that up. So let's see here. I always like these tutorial points sections. Are pretty nice as far as basic syntax, data types, variables. Let's start with that. So the keyword for declaring variables is my var. We type it, and we'll look up at the types in a second. Sorry for all the coughing. My throat's a little rough today. Data type, okay. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. So let's go back to the REPL. Okay, so that eventually did print. So let's try something like this. Let's say var, and let's see. I want to do a number. So what are the types for integers? So let's go to data types. Okay, so it's going to be int. So that's nice. A long 64-bit. Okay, cool. So those are all our types. Okay, so instead of void, it's unit. So that's what unit means. That's good to know. Cool. Back to the REPL. So let's call var my num, which is going to equal an integer. Okay, and that's going to equal 5. And then I would like to print my num. Let's see if it lets me print my num. Okay. happens there, but that just takes a pretty long time to compile. But let's just make sure that yep, int, that's fine. Cool. Okay, well, I'll let that do that. Let's just see if else, see if there's anything weird about how if statements are done, or are they just pretty normal. That looks pretty normal to pretty much every language of how if statements work, so that's easy. Okay. So these are the kind of things I just want to go through. I always want to just see what the loops and the control flow pieces are. So ifs work the same. How about loops? What kind of loops do we have? While looks like a normal while loop, as if it would be in any language like JavaScript. Do we have for loops and such? Doesn't look like it. I don't see a mention of a for loop, at least not yet. Functions, okay, that's pretty straightforward. Okay. So let's see if I finish running. It's still running, and there it goes, and then printed 5. There we go. So it does work. Okay, so let's write something a little bit more complicated before we run this again, because it takes so long to compile. And I think that's more of a factor that this is sort of a newer REPL for REPL.IT than it has anything to do with the language itself. I'm sure if I downloaded it and got it all set up on locally, it would run smoother. So let's see here. Let's do something fun. Let's make a function. Okay, and again, functions looks like they're pretty straightforward. Now the question is, if this is going to be like Java, am I allowed to define standalone functions? With the following form: syntax, function name, return type has to be any valid that type unless the parameters, blah, 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 object add, def. Very similar to Java, a return statement can be used along with the expression. A function that does not return anything can be return a unit. In Java, and indicates a function does not return anything. Anything Scala, here are called procedures. Here's the syntax, object hello, calling functions. We just say Scala provides a number of syntactic variations for invoking functions following as the standard way to call a method. If a function is being called using an instance of an object, then we could use dot notation similar to Java as follows. Okay. Demo. And we have this main function, add int. I see. Okay. So this is pretty much just like Java, just, well, not really all that different. Cool. Slightly less verbose. Not a lot less verbose. So in that case, if I want to create a function, I would have to do it here. So let's say def. So basically, like in Java, you'd have your class. Then your main function is what is basically, it takes that initial class wrapper, this main object, and runs its main function. That's how the program executes. So I can define more functions of the object or class main, and then I can use those functions. So I could just say, hey, add 2. We'll name the function add 2. Okay, and it will take an argument called num, which is just an integer, and it's going to return an integer. Okay, and we will just return num plus 2. Okay, so then what we'll do is we'll do print line, and we will print line add 2. So because this is a method that belongs to the same object, main, okay, I don't have to refer to an instance of main. Cool. Let me just double check the syntax just real quick to make sure that's all as intended. Oh, and I get to use an equal sign here. That's interesting. Int. Okay. Do I need to use an equal sign there? That's interesting. Syntactically. Yeah, I guess you do. I have seen that in another language. It's escaping me. I think in Ballerina it does that. I will have to go back and look at that, but we're going to add that there. Okay, I guess, yeah. Okay, and then we see that here too. So that is the syntax. Sorry for the sirens in the background. I do live in Brooklyn. So print add 2. So theoretically, if this is all successful, we should get the number 7. Because this function defines that we pass in the numbers 5. And we add 2 to it, so it should return 7. Because we're running this function. So let's see if that works. So that's going to take a while. So we'll let that take a second. And go examine a little bit more. And let's go look at classes and objects. Okay. Oh, so that we do have classes. Teach you through how to use classes and objects in Scala. Program a class is a blueprint of objects. You can create an object from the class blueprint with the keyword new. Okay. Object demo. Class point. Okay, and I see you're defining the constructor signature right out of the gate, which I never understood why you didn't do that normally. So that's kind of nice. Cool. Var x f move. So here you're just defining the properties of the class, and here you're defining functions, methods of the class. Got it. Okay, so we're just using object for specifically the class. Okay, I see. So we only usually use the object keyword for the object that is the program. Interesting. Okay, and where's the new keyword? New location. And you invoke the constructor. Okay, easy peasy. So let's see how that's doing. And there, good, it worked. We got 7. Okay. And again, so these are the sort of the steps I take in learning a new language. I just look up those basic ideas. How do I create a function? How do I assign a variable? Now I've done several different languages like this at certain points. So like a lot of this syntax seems very familiar to me because like in Swift, in Kotlin, in many of the newer languages, you have this sort of typing of return values here, and the typing occurs after the variable names. It's not like C++ where you declared it and you mentioned the type first, so it would be like int the variable name. Nowadays, like the typing is always kind of like after the namespace. But otherwise, this seems pretty straightforward, like a normal language. So I'm not gonna spend too much time into it, but we'll try out a quick class. Okay. So I'm gonna assume that I need to define a class. I can define a class over here. Actually, let me just see the syntax they use there. They define the class even before the object. So in that case, I can define. That makes me wonder, was I able to define functions outside of there? Like, am I able to define that before the object definition? Object add. Okay, no, you have to keep your function definitions within there, but you can define classes outside. Okay, I'm getting it. I'm getting it. So we'll say class dog, which has a name, which is a string, and then age, which is an integer. Okay. And then let me go back and take a look at how we define the properties back over here. Oh, no, back to classes. Var x. Okie dokie. So let's see here. Var name, which is a string, equals name. Var something about that doesn't sit right with me, but string. I mean, this is going to be an int equals age. Something doesn't sit right with me the way we define that. XC. I see. Okay. So typically what they're going to do is use C for like constructor. So name constructor, age constructor. There we go. And then we actually create the properties inside the thing. Okay, and then we're going to create a definition. We'll just say, we'll call def info. Okay, and that's going to take no arguments, and it's going to return nothing. So unit equals curly brackets. And what this will do is just going to print line. First it'll print line name. Then it'll print line age. Okay, and I don't need to do like this because it's in the context of the class, and that's a class property. Versus main, again, here everything is within the class, so it's in the context of that object. So let's see here. Let's now, in the main function, say const sparky, not const sparky, it's not JavaScript. Var sparky equals new dog. Then we have to pass in a name, Sparky, 5 years old. And then we'll do Sparky dot, was it just called info? Yeah, info. And let's see if that works. Let me just double check about invoking instance methods. So we have a class point. Let's see whether we create the new point. Val point. Let's see, I see they're using val, not var. Let me see if that's a typo. Do they have another example? Extends point. Object. Yeah, they're using val. Okay, new location. And then that still uses that notation, so that's pretty correct. So what I need to do is change this to val. Okay, val Sparky equals a new dog. Sparky.info, that should work. Let's run it. Let's give it some time. Cool. And let's see, implicit classes allow implicit conversions within the class primary, within the classes in scope. Syntax for implicit classes. Here, implicit class is always in the object scope where the method definitions are allowed, because implicit class cannot be a top level class. Yada 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 yada. Interesting so far. I mean, again, most of the basics are stuff we're used to. Oh, and it worked. See, there's Sparky, age 5. Good. So basically, we've created a class, we've created a function, we've assigned variable names, we've printed variables. So literally in the span of 18 minutes, we've learned a new language, Scala. Okay, I mean, otherwise, and again, the idea is you should always have like one sort of language that you learn fairly thoroughly. Like for me, that was JavaScript. And then Python and Ruby, I kind of know fairly thoroughly, not as thoroughly, but more thoroughly, and Go. But once you start learning those other languages and getting more and more experience with them, just quickly picking up a language like this becomes a lot easier, because you start picking up on the patterns, and you start noticing the syntax doesn't change too often. Like what helped me here, having spent time learning Java before, a lot of the patterns I'm seeing here are very reminiscent of Java, which makes sense because Scala is a Java virtual machine language. So that certainly made this quicker to pick up. But the idea is that that's how you do it. You just, dive in, and REPL is a great tool for doing that, because you can just spin up whatever language you want to practice and practice. And you just play around and you figure it out. So my name is Alex Merced from Alex Merced Coder. I might do this with some other languages I haven't tried yet. Yeah, have a good one. I'll see you guys in the next video. Ciao. And again, join the Slack channel and the Discord channel over there at devnursery.com. You can pretty much contact me directly right there. And subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the video. Follow me on Twitter at Alex Merced Coder, and have a great day.